It's time for the Cybersecurity News Bite with Jim Guckin.
Cybersecurity News Bite, episode number 50. For March 20th, 2023, Google Pixel flaw allows recovery of redacted or cropped images, actively exploited Microsoft Outlook vulnerability, makes Office 365 apps dangerous, Emotet malware now distributed via Microsoft OneNote to evade defenses, and hackers use AI-generated YouTube videos to spread information stealers. Welcome to Cybersecurity News Bite. I am Jim Guckin. So for our first story tonight is, one I didn't think was going to ever be an issue, but apparently it is. So if you have Google Pixel, or if your Android phone utilizes the Google Pixel's image editor, the markup tool, there's a vulnerability which can only be summed up in a dad joke, I think, because that's the way it's called. It's called Acropolis. Acropolis. I can't even say it. Apocalypse, but Acropolis. There we go. I'm finally able to say it. So, what is this vulnerability that is deserving of a dad joke? Well, the vulnerability actually allows for the recovering of images that are edited, even if you redact the image, cropped, or masked an image via this tool, the markup tool, within the last 5 years. It lets them take away those changes. So for some reason, if you had to show, let's just say your credit card, and you took a picture with your Pixel phone in the last 5 years, and then you use the built-in image editing software to, black out the numbers. Well, depending on where you uploaded that, you could have a problem there because that information could be available. Now, the vulnerability was originally discovered by researchers Simon Ahrens and David Buchanan, and they reported this on Twitter. The vulnerability was fixed recently in a March 13th update. So if you haven't updated your Google Pixel, now's the time to just pause this and go do that. And if you're looking for more information on it, it is tracked as CVE 2023-21036. So there's a patch out that fixes that. That's great. That's what you want to hear, right? Not so much in this case. So it fixes it going forward. It doesn't do anything about going back and resolving this issue. So if you have modified an image in the past, that's not changing. It still has this vulnerability. Anything within 5 years ago that you may have modified, cropped, marked out, hidden, cut things out of, use anything in the editing tool, that can all be undone. So any images within the past 5 years that may have this, you need to remove them right away. You can't re-edit them. You just get rid of them. And because of this could expose people out there to having identity stolen. So we talked about credit card. Maybe over the 5 years, your credit card has changed. You got new numbers, whatever. But what if it's your ID, your state issued ID or your federal issued ID, or even your country issued ID if you're outside the US and for some reason you have one of these phones? Well, these are where where it can be dangerous. Now, if you're posting on certain platforms, like a lot of the popular social media, they tend to strip a lot of this extra information out. So you should be fine. But if there's maybe a not as big message board that you're a part of, and it doesn't compress the image, and it just uses kind of the raw thing that you send it, well, that is something that you need to be very, very cautious about. So the issue impacts all Pixel models running Android 9 or later. So anything from Android 9 on, up to the February security update, which came out in March. It also, as I said, could impact non-Pixel smartphones using a third-party Android distribution that the markup tool was used for, like screenshot or image editing. Now, I should say this is not the first time this flaw was found in a Google thing. There was a issue before in Google Docs that the same issue was there. Now, they didn't know about this one being a Pixel, but if you have a Pixel device, I'm just going to warn you right now, make sure you update where you can and do the best you can within 5 years to remember where you might have uploaded sensitive information because it's out there and people can get a hold of it. As I said, most people probably not a big issue for them. I mean, how many times do you upload something of sensitive nature, or if you blanked out stuff that was on your desktop or something along those lines that may be hard to recover in the first place? It's probably not a huge deal. But I warn people because it's out there. It's a flaw, even though it's patched now. And if you got the most recent patch, you're good going forward. But you need to know about going backwards. For our second story this week, there is a vulnerability in the Microsoft 365 suite that has a bunch of cybersecurity researchers concerned. This vulnerability, which is tracked by CVE 2023-23397, allows an unauthenticated actor to obtain a user's credentials by passing along a crafted email package. So you get this email, and it could give the attacker your password and your username. The vulnerability does not require user interaction, which means you don't have to do anything to kind of get this running. It involves Microsoft 365, including if you have MS Office 2019, 2016, 2013. So there's a lot of versions that this impacts. So even if you don't have 365, you need to be aware because these are all Microsoft apps, even the standalone versions, or the click to run as they call it sometimes. Now, as I said, it doesn't require the user to do anything. Because of this, there is a fear out there of it becoming a worm, something crawl through systems and kind of get the information and feed it back to where it goes. Now, how they do this is it's actually kind of interesting. It involves the involuntary disclosure of the victim's NTLM hash. Results in the threat actor declining their identity with stolen credentials via another Windows service. Now, we often talk here about how dangerous is. So the CVSS score of it is 9.8. So that's pretty bad. Now, of course, the thing you always wonder about is, well, what do I do? Well, Microsoft's already kind of released a patch for this. So make sure your version, whether it's 2013, 2016, 2019, or Office 365, get this update. And make sure that it is, that vector of attack is removed from your network or your personal life. You don't want them to have that thing. Now, if for some reason you can't apply this patch for whatever reason, or you have to wait, Microsoft does give you some remediation steps, which is like disable the web client service, bypass NTLM, and block NTLM messaging for remote file shares. Sorry, I can't say NTLM over and over again. But this is what it is. If you do these things, you can go to Microsoft's site. So don't just take it here. You can go to the link on cybersecurity.newsbite.com, look at the show notes, find the link for this original article, and in that article there is a link that takes you to Microsoft's page, which tells you how to deal with this. But there have been a lot of attacks against Microsoft's products, especially Outlook. We just had the one a couple weeks ago where, just having a display, the preview display of a message was able to trigger a virus or a malware to run. And this is once again the same thing, but this is actually worse because without doing anything, an unprotected version of Outlook can get your username and password and impersonate you on the network. It's kind of the old pass the hash thing. They're getting your hash, which is a encrypted version of your password. They're able to use it around the network to pretend to be you. So really important that I recommend right now, if you have any of these Office products, that you go and make sure you have the most up-to-date version so that you are protected against this stuff. Because really the next story I'm gonna have to talk about is once again an Office 365 or a Microsoft Office product. I wouldn't say it's 365, but it is an Office product. And because most people have it, whether you are a business. Some people at home have a personal version of Office. I know a lot of people, especially if you're doing like word processing at home, maybe you have a work version that you install on your home computer. Your business lets you do that. These are all the same kind of attack vectors that bad guys are going to use to get in and be able to do stuff. And you don't want to be the one responsible for it. So please either use the remediation methods that Microsoft has given you, but it's a lot easier just to kind of update it and forget it. Office 365 kind of lets you know when there's updates. Just go look at the updates, click it, deal with it for a couple seconds, and things will be a heck of a lot safer. Now, as promised, the third story for our show today once again talks about Microsoft Office products, this time specifically OneNote. And yeah, we kind of talked about how dangerous these Office products are, but this one combines another thing that you should be afraid of, which is the Emotet malware. And Emotet, for as long as we've talked about it, has been using Microsoft, usually Word or Excel attachments to spread itself. So we're all kind of aware of that. It has the malicious macros it runs. It's something that, most of us are, whether you're not specifically aware of Emotet, you're aware of the tactic. I mean, I've knew about it, for years. And it's kind of one of those things you learn growing up. But you need to be careful now because OneNote is a possible vector that maybe you weren't thinking of. Now, if you're not aware, Emotet is a malware strain. It steals email contacts, content that may be on your computer, downloads, other payloads that they may want to do. So if Emotet can just be the initial infection and then download whatever they need to kind of spread across your network or your home network, and do more ransomware. These are all things you need to be aware of. But Emotet tends to be used against companies to kind of, get money, like most ransomware at this point. Now, the Emotet botnet, and I believe we talked about on the show here, stopped for a couple months. It was dead. I think I even warned people at the time, because I often warn every time I hear, X malware is gone now. You don't have to worry about it. It's just now. Someone's going to bring it back up. I live in that constant fear anymore. And this is what happened. Emotet kind of dropped off the face of the earth for a couple months, and it restarted. It used the campaign again for Word and Excel documents with macros. It wasn't really getting the traction I think the gang behind it wanted to do. So they changed tactics. And now they're using Microsoft OneNote attachments to distribute their malware. And they're using the, kind of the chain email looking things where it looks like someone's responding to an email that's been going on. They impersonate guides, how-tos, invoices, job references, and more. So it's all the same kind of tactic. It's just, while you may be more wary of an Excel document or a Word document with a macro OneNote, you have to worry about OneNote. Because OneNote you can create documents in it, and there's design elements you can put in there. And what this has is just in the design, there's a hidden VB script that's called click.wsf. And it's right under the view button. They put a view button there, and you click the view button, but you're really clicking this click.wsf file, and that runs it. And now Emotet's now downloading as a DLL. It's stored in the temp folder, and then it runs and does all of its evil stuff. So, as I said, it downloads even worse malware. Sometimes Cobalt Strike or something else. Really tools that give the attacker persistence in your network, meaning they kind of dig themselves in and give them reconnaissance so they can see what's on the network. So what do you do? Right now, Microsoft's saying, hey, look, we're aware of this. We are improving OneNote to be more resilient against phishing documents, but there's no timeline for when this update's going to be available to everybody. There is, though, a group policy that you configure that blocks out Microsoft OneNote malicious files, and admins can use group policy to kind of deal with this. And, it may not be perfect, but it is a very good tool in there that you may be able to repel your initial attacks against. So, be cautious of OneNote files now. As I said, most of us might have a block on Words or Excel from running embedded files. But now make sure you specifically add OneNote to it, because that's where we live now, and that's how you have to protect yourself. Though honestly, I wouldn't even just stop at OneNote. Any file that comes in, you have to be cautious of, especially if it's unexpected. And in this job market, if they pretend to be job seekers like we talked about last week or the week before, weeks are blending together at this point, that's what you have to watch out for. Because people are more likely to be, oh, they just sent me this weird file, double click it. It opens in your Office suite. They don't even have to think about it. They may not know the extension, but they will click on it and it just runs. And then, oh, it's hidden behind the same view, and then their network is infected. And hopefully you catch it in time before it starts doing other stuff or getting even worse programs downloaded. For our final story this week, I'm just going to start out by saying, if you're trying to get free or hacked versions of software, probably going to get your computer infected. I lived through the 90s and 2000s where you had a lot of LimeWire and Kazaa and all those other ones that, you try to do stuff and you end up getting a virus on your computer. Well, this is kind of the modern version of that. So there are AI generated YouTube videos out there. And in their descriptions, they link to malicious software. And they pretend to be tutorials on how to download free or cracked versions of software. But instead it installs stuff like Raccoon, Redline, or Vidar malware onto your computer. So specifically, think about the ones that are most often the ones that people want to pirate. Adobe Photoshop, Premiere, Autodesk, AutoCAD. They're available to people who pay, but yet if you go onto a video, it goes, hey, I'll show you how to do it, and click this link and then you find out. So Cloud SEK, who is a cybersecurity company, saw that there was a 200 to 300% month-on-month increase in videos that kind of direct people to malware in the description of these videos. Now, obviously, the hackers are not just going to say, hacked.com/malware.exe. No, they use stuff like Bitly and some other URL shorteners to kind of hide what the URL really looks like. They're also hosting these, even if you do get through it, Discord, GitHub, Google Drive, Mediafire, and Telegram's hosting systems. So now, even if you get past the URL you can't see, those may not necessarily ring as dangerous URLs out there to click on. And some of these links give you right to a malicious zip file as well. So it's very, very dangerous to do this stuff. And if you happen to search these terms, they are using SEO poisoning, which means they are gaming the ranking system of YouTube to make the video appear at the top of search results, meaning more than likely you'll be willing to click it. And it's not just AI generated accounts that you may not be aware of. Maybe you'd be less likely to download Adobe Hackers video, but they're also leveraging some data leaks previously and some social engineering to take over popular legitimate YouTube accounts. And these have the advantage of already having a built-in large audience. And as I said, they're made with AI generated people. They have share screen recordings, audio walkthroughs, all of this. So it's not just like it's a really crappy Word PowerPoint kind of slide. I mean, they did their homework and made it look really good. And they have an AI person who kind of talks through it, and screen shares and all this, everything that they want to do to kind of really trick you to believe this is someone who's really done this. And because it's getting views, because they're using SEO poisoning, it's something you need to worry about, because people are going to try to get free stuff. It's the basis of the internet. I think most people at one time or other have tried to get, or at least searched for, how to get something you had to pay for free. Or you see those like easy points towards software. You do is click this survey and answer some questions. Stupid stuff like that. This is what it is, but it's on the next level because it's made to look like a legitimate, like, hey, I'm a hacker and I'll show you how to get this stuff for free, but not. And the fact that it's on YouTube, the fact that it's in front of a lot of people, the fact that people may not be necessarily as savvy to find it or protect themselves even if they do find it. Like, this is the stuff that worries me because this is not attacking an organization per se. More likely, if you're in an organization you need Adobe, they have Adobe. But the reason this concerns me, even from that standpoint, like, look, I want to make sure you're protected as a person. And the reason for that is, one, I just don't want anyone being scammed. Two, well, we kind of, have no barrier between personal and business life anymore. Some people use their home computer, their personal computer, to do both. So the line blurs between this stuff, and maybe you don't have software to monitor what they're doing, and they download it, and now somehow they VPN and they have access to your corporate network. It's not something that they would know to look for. I mean, I can tell you when I was a kid and I downloaded software I shouldn't have had, and I double clicked it and it didn't run. I was like, oh, well, it must be broke. And that was where I stopped. Now, I'm smarter now, but in the early days of the internet, there was you had antivirus, but that was about it. There was known virus strains. It was a lot harder to catch things back then. And luckily for me, I often tinkered with my computer to the point where I had to do reinstalls quite often. But this is the era we live in now where, most people don't do that. There's not a lot of technical experience needed for computers. And you probably don't reinstall your operating system that often unless you get a brand new computer, which may be 4 or 5 years for most people. At that point, a lot of damage can be done. So please, if you're on YouTube, do not search for cracked versions of software. Because hackers now are taking advantage of that, and, well, they'll end up taking advantage of you because that's just what they do. And then, they'll install the malware they need, and who knows, maybe, steal your identity, steal your bank account information. Let's just not walk down that. Thanks again for listening to the show. Don't forget, you can find out more information, including show notes with links to the articles that we used to write this, at cybersecurity.newsbite.com. You can find more information about me at jimguckin.com, or if you want to drop me a line, you can email me at me@jimguckin.com. Thanks for listening to the show. Make sure you stay safe online, and we'll talk again next week.
You've been listening to the Cybersecurity News Bite with Jim Guckin. Learn more about our show at cybersecurity.newsbite.com.